Oh, hello, Kevin Kowalick. How are you?
Good, good. Oh, hello, Jeremy Bloom.
Uh, I wanted to have you on this episode, and I wanted to have you on the pod because you did something that many people in our space talk about. They hypothesize. They say one day I am going to make a big pivot. And without me explaining your pivot, why don't you tell us who I have the pleasure of speaking with and the kind of giant career pivot that you've made?
Yeah, yeah. When you say it like that, the some of the anxieties and the old feelings and emotions come back, but they quickly subside. So Kevin Kowalick, Adtech, ad agency, buy side, sell side, product, everything in between. Vet for 23 years in industry, 10 years of holding company agencies, 11 at all sorts of variations within Comcast advertising, Freewheel, and two at TransUnion before I made the very bold and very rewarding decision to move into full-time academia. So I'm now a professor at Temple University, and I also have a professional development and executive coaching business.
Love that. Love both of those pivots that you made that you're tying into what you're now doing. We met in one of your former roles, and from there, definitely hit it off. And there's something to be said. We're same age, same level, and I made a pivot too several years back when I decided, like, okay, you know what? I want to create, I want to build, I want to have my own companies, and I always did on the side. But now, being very front and center of having multiple companies, I recently heard of the term multipreneur
Oh
instead of
yeah,
entrepreneur. So, but something that I find fascinating is the due to say ratio of when we first met a couple of years back, when you said, you know, I've always loved helping people. I've always wanted to coach, to mentor, just being there to help folks on my team, people in the industry. And I could tell the passion every time that we spoke that you have for teaching and educating people and storytelling. And so there's a lot to be said when someone goes from very close to top of the food chain at large companies, well respected, saying, you know what? It's not about I'm just going to say for right now, in the short
yeah,
term, the two, it's about the dopamine effect of how I feel and how I'm giving my time, referring to you, how you feel, how you are giving your time, how you're spending your time. And then the feeling that you get in return of helping these amazing people. Um, Tell us about this pivot. Tell us about how the first several months have
yeah,
been.
yeah.
Couple
It's
months.
so much you just said there that I want to dig into. So first of all, multipreneur, portfolio lifestyle. Yeah, that's all the rage. Getting to dabble and do like a few different rewarding or challenging things instead of one. Um, you said dopamine rush or dopamine hit or dopamine something. And I just reflected back on like my own career growth and journey. I was very ambitious. I got a promotion, didn't take 5 seconds to celebrate it and already on to the next thing. And just chasing the next dopamine high. And something happened to me around, I don't know, maybe 40, 42-ish years old, where I just said, I don't want the next one. Like, I don't know if I ever want to be an SVP or an EVP or a president. Like, I just, my Maslow's hierarchy of needs kind of got met, and had the great fortune of and privilege of, reaching that closer to self-actualization. Not saying I'm like an enlightened self-actualized being, but, kind of getting there. I'm like, what am I chasing? What am I doing? Like, what's important to me? And I think that we all have that in the back of our mind of like the thing we'll do someday. Like someday I'll do this thing. And for me, that was coaching. Many years ago, I did have the great fortune of working with a coach, and she helped me so much and so quickly. And I just remember thinking like, I want her job someday. But being whatever I was, early mid 30s, like I didn't feel I had the wisdom or the experience or the credibility to be a coach. So in the background, I laid the groundwork, training, certification, credentialing, coach on the side for a little while, all those things. And then, it's funny how, you know, you can have a plan or an idea or a thought, but once you start to take action, it snowballs. So I said I wanted to be a coach, so I started to do things toward being a coach. I knew I had always wanted to teach, and I had the opportunity to teach at Temple University a marketing class. And I loved it, caught the bug. I knew it was for me. I knew it was the life for me. But again, it was like someday. I couldn't even let myself fathom thinking of doing it any sooner than retirement or maybe an early retirement. And, you know, the universe had other plans and it happened a lot sooner, and I was able to make the move. And, you know, after a lot of soul searching and planning, you know, I did it. And it's been really, really rewarding so far.
And so you're in the Philly area. You've got you boys. You're married. How did your family take it when you decided to? Were they excited for you?
They were very excited. My family's extremely supportive. Listen, I had great experiences at Comcast TransUnion, great bosses, great everything. But like many of us, you start to reach that burnout where you're doing too much, you care too much, taking on too much. And, you know, sometimes our families or our friends know us better than we know ourselves. So I think they saw what was happening to Dad, and they saw, you know, I might have been a little more withdrawn or tired. So when I teased this out, they could not have been like happier for me. And, you know, of course, as a parent, you know, a leader of the family, you think, you know, how is this going to impact them? I'm taking a huge, you know, pay cut. And, you know, you start to think about college tuition. They're 18 and 16, and, you know, your brain does crazy things like, are they going to have food? Is there going to be a foreclosure sign on the front lawn? And all these silly things we tell ourselves. But anyway, to answer your question, yeah, they were super supportive.
When you were throughout your career, have there been specific mentors that have made a big impact on you that have helped you?
Yeah. Like I alluded to, Comcast and TransUnion and elsewhere. I've been very fortunate. Like there's that cheesy saying of like, I stand on the shoulders of, you know, those who came before me. And it's really true. That two that immediately come to mind. One, there's for those who are on audio, you can't see me pointing. There is a framed picture behind me. It's an old wooden frame, brown paper background with a picture of a feather, and the feather is ripped out of a magazine. If I were to get up out of my chair and pick that up, I would show you the other side, and it's the back of a grocery bag. And my first leader at my first agency, at Group M, what you make as an assistant planner, day one, it's not a lot, and living in Manhattan, and I was eating ramen noodles and peanut butter and jellies. She used to bring me grocery bags of food. Her name is Sam Gargiulo. She's extraordinary. And she, right out of the gate, my very first job out of school, taught me what a leader was and how a leader focuses on taking care of their humans first. And if you take care of the humans, the tasks, the jobs, the goals, everything else will fall into place. So she's one. And then another one. Sorry.
What was Sam's name?
Pardon me?
What was Sam's last name? I didn't hear that part.
Sam Gargiulo, Garden City, Long Island. I'll have to take this recording and send it to her. She'll laugh. Yeah, she was a supervisor on the team. And then the next name that comes to mind who had a really big impact is Ed Mazzella. And Ed was my hiring manager at my first role at Comcast. And Ed led from behind, servant leader. Ed was the first leader that I had who wasn't a boss or a manager. Ed showed me what good leadership looks like. When I mean by good leadership, yes, it saw me, cared about the team, all the good check the box things, but he rarely told me what to do. He asked questions, and I can tell he knew the answer, but he was pulling it from me and forcing me to think and forcing critical thinking on me. And he also just modeled really good behavior. I watched the way he treated people, the way he treated clients. He just really made an impact on me. And there's a thing that we have between us that when we stopped working together, I gave him a framed piece of artwork that I had made with a verse of one of the verses of the Tao Te Ching. I don't know if you're familiar with the Tao Te Ching. There's 81 verses. It's this, I don't even know what you call him, mystic philosopher. He was from a time, I think even like 1,000 or 2,000 years. Fact check me, before the Buddha. I think he's kind of the archetype of like the Chinese man who's a hermit who lives in the mountains. Kind of. Anyway,
Got it.
he
This is
had
no.
these
Oh,
81 verses, and some of them are about leadership. And one of the lines in this verse is, when the master governs, the people are hardly aware that he exists. And like the end of it is something like, uh, when the work is done, his people say, we did it all by ourselves. And I just feel like he really embodied that, uh, because he trusted me. And it was the first time I really felt like, oh, I'm on my own, but that's okay. And he's trusting me. And if I need anything, he's there. But yeah, so those are two names. And I mean, I've had a lot others since.
I'm sure, but those are two great examples. Did those two mentors and leaders in the space help you develop the skill set and the way that you have led teams at your previous employers, and the way that you coach now, the way that you're a mentor on OhHello, the way that you teach in your classroom at Temple?
Yeah, yes. And it's not one of those things where you ask me that question and I think, oh, yeah, no, I can see how what they did carried over. It was very intentional, and it was very constant. Like I thought of them frequently. Like they actively inspired um, how I led, how I coach, how I teach. But one of the things, that I coach on, especially to more junior or first time people leaders, is like the notion that it's okay to not know everything. And I think so many of us, myself very much included, I got my value and my self-worth and my identity from what I knew and what I did. And, I was straight A's, top of my class, and, my identity was smart, good boy. So my years of navigating Comcast taught me that it's, yes, of course, we have to know how to do our jobs, but it's also more important about who we know and how we behave and how we carry ourselves, who we know, and that we need to, I guess, sort of age gracefully in business. And what I mean by that is like aging gracefully from being a really good doer to a manager to a leader to an inspirational leader. Like, most importantly, how we motivate and appreciate people and how we make them feel. Like, do we let coworkers and our teams know that we see them, we hear them, they matter, that they have a voice? In one of my leadership classes that I taught this week, I actually teach all organizational dynamics and leadership classes. I don't teach marketing anymore. So it goes very, very much hand in hand with the coaching. And in class, we talked about, sorry, I just talked over you.
Totally fine. I apologize. I love that you brought this up, because here we're talking about all these things about your advertising, marketing, tech career, but the fact that you do organizational leadership, management, that level of understanding human development, industrial like components that go into how we ascend within our careers and as people, touch on that, hit on that, because that's important.
Yeah, it's not a direct left turn. It is a bit of a left turn there. It's not a direct turn if you look on paper, but knowing that I wanted to do this and make this move eventually to education and coaching, I made some very intentional moves in my career, both at Comcast and TransUnion, where, yes, while I still worked in Adtech and product management and business operations roles, I intentionally took on responsibilities that allowed me to be more involved in organizational dynamics. So like when I worked at Comcast and we acquired Freewheel and all these companies, I was part of the team that led their integration from culture, people, product, process. So really dug deep into dynamics. And then, led some learning and development teams and organizational change management teams, sales training, product training, skill development. So within my day job, I carved out spaces for myself in areas that I was more passionate about, that aligned with, coaching, teaching, helping, making an impact. So yeah, that was the earlier path that I had laid toward this. And, when I knew I wanted to teach, I thought I was just going to teach marketing or advertising because that's where I grew up. So when the opportunity to teach organizational dynamics and leadership and change management classes came up, it was just, I don't know, a sign from the universe of crazy alignment there.
tell us about a time that a student, a client, a mentee of yours made a breakthrough, just that helped you in the sense of that impact that I subconsciously had been making to help these people develop. Like, tell us just about an example of this.
Oh gosh, yeah. Let me think of one that'll be a really good story because I've been fortunate to have a few. Um, okay, so all right, there's one. So there's somebody that I was working with, um, in a coaching capacity. He was a client of mine, and coaching is never about what's on the surface. It's never about I need to learn this skill or I need to get ready for a promotion. That's the surface level, but there's always something deeper than that. And this guy that I was working with, he was a product manager for 13 or 14 years or so, and feeling stuck. A lot of coaching is about stuck. I feel stuck, and stuck looks different for everybody. It could be I'm stuck in this role, I'm stuck in this company, stuck in this industry, but essentially it's a lot of coaching is around motivating somebody to change or get unstuck. And change can be really hard. And it's very, very hard to motivate somebody to change. They can be influenced or coerced or bribed, but true change or motivation happens when the pain of doing the same thing becomes more painful than just taking the leap and doing the scary dang thing. So this guy that I was working with in this role for 13 years at this one company, and he just knew he was stuck, but he was afraid to leave because it was the only job he had ever worked at, the only department, the only function he's ever been in. So we just worked through a lot of that fear of what's on the other side. And, long story short, he ended up getting a job at another company, and he was terrified of accepting this role, terrified of letting his company down or upsetting his boss. And, so you get into people pleasing, and terrified of going to this new company because the unknown is scarier than the known. And, worked through all that. And he got an offer, and he called me, and he was so excited. He was so excited because he got a 4% increase of what he made then. And, I said in much kinder terms, like, that's unacceptable. And he was just floored because he was just so excited about getting this job, and I stole his thunder. And I said, you're worth more than that. And I know that just sounds so cheesy as I said it out loud, but like, he's worth more than that. And like, he didn't believe it. And so we worked through a lot of that. And I had asked him to ask for an amount that would have been a 20% raise of what he was currently making. And he's like, I can't do that. And I said, well, they don't know that. You ask for what you're worth, not for, et cetera, et cetera. So days, and he mustered the courage, and he asked for what would have been a 20% raise. And he ended up getting 14. And then not only did he get 14, he got an apology and extra cash in his equity signing bonus. As like, hey, sorry we couldn't get you to where you needed to be, but we're going to throw this equity at you too. And he just he was floored. He could not believe that happened. So like, that's just an example of, the story on the surface is, guy wanted to get a new job, was a little nervous about leaving his job, was going to take and settle, got a new job, got more money, and he was going to settle, and he would have been happy. But forgive the cheesiness here, but the power of coaching is, to help somebody else, help themselves and get unlocked and unstuck.
Of course. So how do you bring those real world lessons into the classroom, into Temple University with your students?
Oh, all the time, every day. As you can tell, I'm a little bit of a storyteller, and so I might teach an academic lesson rooted in theory, rooted in leadership theory, this approach, this model, and then I'll give real world examples from my career, or tell stories about things that have happened to friends or coworkers to ground it, because everyone learns in different ways. Some people learn by reading and studying. Some people learn charts, graphs, numbers. Some people learn, et cetera, et cetera. So storytelling is a powerful way to learn. As humans, before written word and mass media, we were storytellers. So whenever I share something that happened in, quote, the real world, it often resonates with them. And I find that's when they lean in more, and that's when they ask more questions. And yes, we'll go a little off topic, and I might have to say, oh, you know what? I'm going to post a video, or the rest of the lecture online. You have to watch it on your own time. Own time. I trust you will, but I just try to go with the flow of the classroom, and the feedback forms I get at the end of a semester are often acknowledging that the practical real world application of the theory is what resonates the most.
What are the biggest gaps between what organizations expect and what emerging leaders are actually ready for?
Yeah, I like that phrasing of emerging leaders. Going back to an earlier point, something I said, I think that one of the key areas of focus in my coaching is a program that I have for first-time people leaders, which I will now say emerging leaders. And it's to help them go from doers to leaders. Someone in the cubicle does a really great job at their job, and they're promoted because the good work that they do, and they're given a team of people to manage and a high five and a hearty good luck. And then we create this ecosystem of bad bosses who were never properly coached or mentored or guided or trained or set up for success. So I teach this cohort of first-time leaders on conflict management and giving feedback and how to develop careers of your new direct reports. Simple things like time management or presentation skills, dealing with imposter syndrome, executive presence, how to show up in front of a senior audience, et cetera, et cetera. So, that's something that I think that we could do a better job of supporting these emerging leaders and preparing them for leadership above and beyond doing the tasks that promoted them.
Really well said. What's one piece of advice you'd give to someone who's stuck in their career? We're talking about how as a coach, you deal with people that feel stuck. If there's one, maybe two, three pieces of advice, guidance, because it's different for every single person you speak with based on their scenario. But if you were based on the trends and what you see and what you've experienced, would love to hear just your special sauce.
Yeah, I think the advice I'd give is around being stuck. Like I said, no matter what your scenario or surface level story is that you come to me with, underneath it all, you're stuck. And underneath being stuck is being afraid. So the cliche advice that I would give you is that the life you're seeking is on the other side of fear. It's on the other side of what you're afraid of. So you're afraid of something, whether you can acknowledge it or realize it or not. So define, identify, embrace what you're actually afraid of. Think about it, feel it, write it down, and figure out an action plan. Because the only way to not be afraid is to just take an action. Like we talked about earlier, snowballing. You take one small action, it leads to another action. It builds confidence. It builds self-esteem. You feel you could do it. You start to see yourself do it. And this thing you're afraid of becomes less scary. All of the coaching I do is about people who are afraid of this thing on the other side of this change, on the other side of this decision. And the stories they tell themselves about why they can't do it is heartbreaking and mind-blowing. And I've told the same stories. We all do. But yeah.
Of course.
Get on the other side of fear.
You're so right. And we all go through it at different aspects of our personal journeys and professional journeys. What's a career mistake that you're glad that you made?
Well, if we can stay on this, I guess.
Yeah, this
philosophical
is all about
topic here. I guess the biggest career mistake I ever made was getting into this industry on day one. But the intention of the question is, what's the biggest career mistake that I'm glad I made? I guess it is getting into this business from day one. My friends from growing up in college are like, I cannot believe you in an MBA. I cannot believe you're a vice president at these big companies. Like I was and still am like Birkenstocks and hoodies, and who I really am is chill. Like I wanted to be a writer and an English professor or a therapist. And while life didn't exactly line up that way, like all my career choices in media, in advertising, gave me the life experiences and the empathy and the pain to be able to teach leadership instead of English. And while I'm certainly not a therapist, a coach is as close as you get in the business environment of working through getting unstuck in business problems. So, I suppose that the biggest mistake I made was getting into this industry to begin with. And, I'm glad I made the mistake because you and I are sitting here talking now.
Bingo. That was awesome. I love that. If you were to speak to different leaders within our space, within the area where you spent 23 years of your career and so many friends, colleagues, connections that you're still obviously in touch with, and you coach a bunch of folks. If you were to speak to these company leaders, what would you tell them about investing in coaching, mentorship, getting external advice through a platform like OhHello.ai, which you are a mentor on?
Yeah, I am. I love it, by the way. Thank you for allowing me to participate. It's extremely rewarding. I had a session earlier today. It's a great part of my week and my life. Thank you. What I would tell a leader in terms of considering coaching or mentoring, as someone, I guess, who's on the other side of industry now, I would say that many of your people are struggling, and they're not telling you how much they're struggling, and they're not telling you how much they're stuck. Many of them are afraid. They're waiting for another shoe to drop. They're waiting for a layoff or a merger. But behind that fear, or next to that fear, is a deep desire to grow. And many of them want to grow with you. They don't want to leave your company, with their choice or not. There's that saying that people don't leave bad jobs, they leave bad bosses, or they leave companies that don't invest in them. So, I'm sure you've read many of the same studies after study here that shows that employees are, yes, motivated by money, but they're more so motivated by having a sense of job satisfaction, of purpose, of feeling appreciated, of having a little more freedom and flexibility, of being invested in. So, yes, professional development opportunities can provide all that. And, it is more expensive to replace good talent than it is to invest in them.
It's like, the entire pitch. I mean, that was amazing. None of this was planned, but truly, we've probably read some of the same studies. We share some of the same passions, undoubtedly. Any other parting words of wisdom to those listening and watching?
No, they're just I think I said it earlier. Just as a leader, make sure your people are seen, that they heard, that they matter. They will be loyal. They'll stay with you. And when it's their time to leave, you'll be okay with it.
Kevin, this has been awesome. This has been a wonderful discussion and dialogue. Really appreciate you doing this. And again, big kudos, my friend, for being able to find something that you're so passionate about and crush it.
Yeah, and big gratitude to you, because you were one of the people who I had to talk it all through and work it out. And can I really do this? And what would that look like? And, work through my own fear. So thank you. I appreciate your friendship and counsel.
Thank you. Feelings mutual. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Kevin.